That's one of the pieces that you'll be playing in tape 3. In tape 3, what we'll be doing is going on further with our study of the left hand. We'll be working on the last 3 strings, the D, A, and E, and then summarizing the whole thing, so that by the end of the 3rd tape, you'll have completed the first position, and we'll know all the notes in your first position, including the chromatic notes, which we started to introduce in this tape. For instance, the F sharp and the C sharp and D sharp that we introduced. So you should basically know all the notes in your first 4 frets at that point. We'll also be introducing further 2-part accompaniment solo playing and beginning introduction to chords, playing 3 notes and even 4 notes simultaneously. Before I close, I'd like to summarize and perhaps elaborate on a few of the points that we discussed in this tape. We went through a lot of material, and there's a lot of technical abilities and theoretical knowledge to be mastered in this tape. So again, as I've stressed all along, be very patient. Take your time and make sure you've mastered everything before you go on. And it might even be beneficial, even if you feel you're doing well, to occasionally go back and just go over some of the older material that you've worked on. Make sure that you haven't forgotten some of the concepts and some of the techniques that we've introduced. I'd like to just talk a bit about the left hand. Again, when you're sitting up straight, and concentrate primarily on both shoulders. People have a tendency, for some reason, for the right shoulder or sometimes the left shoulder to be very tense. So you could start out, as I said before, with your left arm relaxed. And just the weight of your arm, the gravity, should pull it down. It should pull that shoulder down. You could do the same thing with the right arm. In fact, you could balance the guitar, which might be a bit tricky, and let both arms hang. And feel your shoulders relaxed, feel your back relaxed, and then bring your arms up, like that. It's good if you can memorize the feeling. What I mean by that is that when they do become tense, right away you catch it. You notice, shoulder's getting tense, and you can release it. The problem that happens usually is that tension creeps in and we don't notice it. And then a bit more creeps in, and a bit more, and a bit more. And before we know it, we've got this mass of tension in the shoulder, in our hands, in our wrists, in our arm. So if you can catch it right at the beginning, it's easy at that point to release it. If you don't, what happens? That becomes a habit. We get used to playing like this. We may not even have the slightest idea that our shoulders are tense. Although anybody watching us can obviously see that we're very tense. But because we're so used to it, we don't even notice it. Just like on the guitar, when we play, a lot of people who aren't guitarists hear a sort of sliding noise. And they say, oh, guitars, they buzz so much, they make so much noise. And we don't even notice it usually because we become so used to hearing it that if somebody says, well, you're making so many sliding noises, you should eliminate them. We sort of wonder what they're talking about because we've sort of blanketed it out. We've become so used to hearing it that we don't hear it. Same with tension, same thing. So if at the beginning of each practice session, you can just relax your shoulders, relax your arms, and always start from a relaxed attitude. Then begin your study. You could begin with the right hand arpeggios that we mentioned. That might be a good way to practice. So you'd start with the right hand, do a bit of exercise, a bit of practice just with the right hand, doing some of the arpeggios. Very slow, then gradually increasing the speed perhaps. Then you could go to the 2 hands together and practice that. Practice some of the studies, practice some of the pieces, whatever ones you happen to be working on. Be careful when you're using the left hand. Be aware of some of the points that we've mentioned. The fact that the hand should be parallel. The knuckles should be parallel to the neck. Watch out for this habit. Bring the hand like that. Also, try to avoid bringing the hand in like that. Keep some space in here so that it's just the fingers and thumb that are in contact with the neck. Also the thumb. Beware the thumb, that it's flat, that it's not pointed like that. It's flat. Gives a solid base for the left hand. Again, the tips of the fingers are a 90-degree angle. They face down to the string. These two fingers being a bit flatter. Also, try to get into the habit right at the beginning of playing just behind the fret. You'll find if you don't, if you play towards the back of the fret, you get this. A lot of buzzing noise. But as you move it up, the note cleans up. You'll also find you don't have to apply as much pressure if you're just behind the fret. So that's very important. And it's not a difficult habit to get into. It's just as easy to play here as it is to play there. And if you get into the habit of playing here, then you're going to have to do a lot of work then to reorient your whole hand to play at this point. So right from the beginning, practice very slow and carefully, placing your fingers just behind the fret. Also, watch out for the flying finger syndrome, the fingers always flying away from the neck. Try to keep the fingers relaxed and just hovering above the strings when they're not in use. Again, this is just a symptom of tension. If your fingers are relaxed, they don't go anywhere. If they're tense, they fly up. And the biggest culprit seems to be the fourth finger. It's constantly tense like that, or the opposite thing of pulling it in. In any case, we're adding tension. There's energy in that finger when it should just be relaxed, when it should be just hovering above the fret. Another important thing is this arm. Very common problem is this, sort of the flapping the wings. From the shoulder to the elbow, very relaxed, just hanging there. So again, the idea of the arm relaxed, bent at the elbow, and brought up and placed on the neck. Also watch out that we don't pull it in. It's the same problem. You'll note all these problems I've been talking about are all somewhat related to tension. If our arm is tense, we tend to pull it in, push it out. We tend to have our fingers flying out. We tend to play with this finger sticking out. Find if your arms, your body in general, is very relaxed, it makes playing much easier, much more enjoyable. And I hope you've enjoyed this tape, and I hope you'll join me in tape 3, and so we can continue in our study of the classical guitar.